Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all fandoms, welcome to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 158. I am the Angry Raccoon.
I'm the Indigenous Owl.
Bringing you the first podcast of 2021 in January. And we are back with hopefully a smaller podcast since the last podcast.
Oh yeah, 5 hours long.
Over 5 hours long, and I'm still shocked about that. Even today, It's been a couple of weeks. I'm still shocked.
Same.
But I'm actually pretty happy and glad that people have actually listened to it or attempted to listen to it, because it's got quite a few views as of now. And I assumed that a 5 hour long podcast was gonna, deter people away. I honestly expected it to get, minus views to some extent. But I'm glad people enjoyed that, and that was an experience recording that podcast.
Yeah, that was fun.
But we're back with the, normal podcast for now. And I've got Owl on this podcast.
Hi, everybody.
Back once again. And we're basically going to talk about some both, oldish stuff that we never talked about last year because it just came out and we were in the midst of doing the end of the year podcast, and some stuff that's just come out. So it's going to be a nice mixed bag to kind of get everything caught up to an extent. And I'll ask you, Al, how was your, Christmas, New Year's, and how's January 2021 been so far?
I've got to say, this year's been off on a lazy start. All I've been really doing is just, watching. I watched, one series, and I've just been gaming quite a lot. But before I even start off, last year I was watching, in the lockdown, I was watching, the earlier podcast episodes.
Okay.
So I just wanted to use the quote of, so hey Raccoon, guess what I've been watching?
Oh, okay.
So I start off the year, I've been watching I watched a series called Dark Desire. It's a crime thriller on Netflix. It's directed by Leticia Lopez Magali. The show is in Spanish, it is, and it's also set in Mexico. It essentially takes place with a woman called Alma, who is a university teacher and is married to a judge named Leonardo, and they have a daughter called Zoe. At first glance, I actually thought the family was a bit estranged. I thought maybe the mum and dad weren't together, but I don't know. I just kind of felt that dynamic. And even Alma's relationship with her daughter, I just thought it was just estranged. But I think it was just to kind of give that setting at first. But basically, it starts off with Alma. She goes off on a weekend visit to see her longtime friend Brenda, and basically, when she gets to the house, she's saying to Alma says to Brenda, I think Leo's cheating on me with his assistant at work. So Brenda, as a friend, is kind of just asking her the questions of what does the girl look like, what's her name, blah blah blah, and they're just talking about the situation. And basically, Brenda's like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to find you a guy so, you can get even with your husband. That's all I'm going to say. The show is actually very dark and very twisted. It gets there. It's not just about, just a simple scandal, should I say. I'm not even going to go into any more depth, but episode 1 gets dark real quick. That's all I'm going to say. My thoughts on the show. Within the first 10 minutes, I was hooked. Usually with series, it takes time to build up and it gets good. I'm just going to say, for example, there was a previous series I was watching on Netflix, The Witcher.
Yeah.
I thought, a lot of people said the show's really good, but I watched the first episode, I really couldn't get into it at all. I couldn't even go on to episode 2. That's how boring it was.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that about, The Witcher. It's been very, almost like Marmite. People either love it or hate it. And a lot of people I've spoken to as well have said that they haven't made it past the first episode, so I'm not surprised that you would say that.
Okay. And, but this show literally just gets into the plot, straight away from episode 1. It doesn't mess around at all. This show also, it has you second guessing yourself. You feel like you can predict what's going to happen, but actually it's not the case. So I feel like the show definitely has good writing with it. I would highly recommend this show to anyone that's into crime thrillers and stuff like that. It's a really, really good show. Definitely underrated as well. So that's it for Dark Desire.
When did that series come out, by the way?
Oh, it came out last year, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is going to be season 2 as well coming out this year, so something to talk about probably for the end of year podcast.
Oh, well, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, and the next thing I'll be talking about is Tekken. I'm going to be just very brief on this. Yeah, I've been playing a mixture of Tekken 7 and Tekken Tag 2. I'm trying to figure out like a new main character, because I usually main like Yoshimitsu, but he is very difficult to actually play as when you get into like the depth of learning Tekken. He's one of the advanced characters, but he's he's freestyle, so you could be like a crazy Yoshimitsu or you could be a very solid Yoshimitsu player. It's entirely up to you, but it is very, very tricky because like they've changed his stances a lot. Like from Tekken 5 to Tekken 6, when I used to play Yoshimitsu a lot in 5, but when we transitioned onto 6, it was like his whole moveset changed drastically. So I was like, oh my god, I'm not too sure whether I'm going to keep this character or not, but I know now for sure I'm definitely not going to keep him as my main, and I'm thinking of maybe learning more intermediate characters to learn rather than advanced characters to learn for now.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting into the technicals of it now.
Yeah. I was going to say, and the next and final thing I've been up to is I've been playing Mortal Kombat 11 as well.
Mm-hmm.
I finally got the copy after how long? And I played the story mode as well, part 1 so far. I did just purchase Aftermath yesterday, so I will be playing that very soon.
That's the DLC, right?
Yeah,
okay.
DLC. And I enjoyed the story quite a lot, but only due to like the character development side of it. So I really noticed the character development on Scorpion and Raiden the most. I'm not going to say why, because it will be spoilers. There were a few flaws in the story, though. There was one particular part that kind of annoyed me a bit. I'm not going to lie. I am going to say it because it's not really a spoiler. There is a scene where Sub-Zero meets Noob Saibot, and they repeat everything they say in the MK9 story. I am even going to say the quote. So, literally, like, when Sub-Zero sees Noob Saibot, he's just like... Noob Saibot's real name is Bihan, so he's just like, oh, Bihan, is that you? And then he's just like, yeah, it is I. And I'm like, wait, he said that in MK9 story. And then literally, like, when the battle is over, Sub-Zero is like, oh, yeah, he uses the quote that Noob Saibot says in MK9, which is, we share blood, but we're not brothers. And I'm like, but Noob Saibot said that in MK9 story. That's just lazy writing. I'm sorry, someone should have rewrote the script there. Sorry, I don't know. That annoyed me a little bit.
Did you double check to make sure it was actually the same?
Yeah, no, I know it's exactly the same. I double checked and everything.
Jeez, that's a bit weird.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Like, you could do that and make a point of it. Like, let's say, oh, they've done the same song and dance before, but if they're not making that kind of point, then yeah, it just sounds like they just took the same lines or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been done deliberately. I don't know, but I just felt like I literally when I played it, I was like, no, this quote was used in Mortal Kombat 9. I know it. I just know. But anyway, moving on. I definitely think another character was really poorly written as well, and that was Kotal Khan. Yeah, I feel like he is just a pushover, and that's all I'm going to say, because I will get into spoilers, and I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. But Raccoon, you and I can talk about this after the podcast.
Sure thing.
But on a positive note, I do really admire the voice acting on Sub-Zero and Raiden. I liked Sub-Zero's voice because Mortal Kombat 9 Sub-Zero, his voice was different. The voice actor was different in MK9 from MK10. His voice actor from MK10 definitely gets into the role a lot more. His voice suits, like, I feel like because it's like a deep voice, but it really suits his ability as well. I don't know, it's got that like tint to his voice. And like Raiden, his voice actor has stayed the same from MK9 to MK11, so I feel like, damn, this voice actor must be doing a really good job. So yeah, those are the things I've been actually up to. That's it.
Interesting. So keeping yourself busy.
Yeah.
I've kind of been keeping myself busy as well. The one of the main things I did, which I'm still trying to do, was I went back to Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time, and I did all of the flashback tapes.
Okay.
which, for those of you who don't know, the flashback tapes are unlockable missions in which you have to complete trials back in 1996, before the events of Crash Bandicoot.
Okay.
So these are essentially the trials that, Neocortex, had, Coco and Crash do before things happened. And although I don't consider, let's say, some of the things said to be canon, because it is another developer kind of, filling in the blanks and kind of making fun of what happens in the later games, it was pretty interesting. They do go into some pretty interesting stuff, like, for example, you find out Crash Bandicoot's full name.
Oh, right, okay.
Which I won't say just in case people consider that a spoiler, but there's some other pretty cool stuff, like, for example, they do explain or give an explanation for, where Coco Bandicoot comes from. They kind of just say that she was created after Crash left and as Crash 1 was happening.
Okay.
So they do some nice stuff, and there's some great lines that they kind of make fun of, like, there's a section where, Neocortex is interviewing Engine, for the role, and there's a great bit where Neocortex says, also, was that rocket in your head, part of a failed experiment? And Engine says, what rocket? So there's like really silly stuff like that in the game.
Yeah.
The flashback tapes, the missions themselves are just absolutely brutal.
Oh wow, okay.
They're really not fun at certain points because they're just a bit too cryptic. Some are really fun and they're really great when you figure it out and you kind of get a nice flow. But some of them, like the second to last one, if you want to see like unfair and like malicious, look at the second to last flashback tape. It is ridiculous. That one took me about an hour to beat.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, some of them took me a while to beat, but the problem with the second to last flashback tape was that it was me just trying to do the same thing over and over again, as opposed to other ones which I was stuck on. It was because of like one jump, or I just wasn't getting the whole flow of it perfectly. So it gets a bit ridiculous, but it's a bit annoying. I've just got the time trials left to do. And the other thing I watched over the, I guess, since the last podcast, was I watched all of the series 1 to 5 of the BBC dark comedy drama series Inside Number 9. Now, this series has been on my list for a long time, as a lot of people kind of compare it to Black Mirror.
Oh, okay.
And essentially the idea behind this series is that it is a anthology series of dark, disturbing, creepy, but sometimes comedic drama stories that take place in one location, typically like a room or like a house or a flat. But each one of these locations is always numbered number 9. So literally every episode, every story takes place inside number 9, which is quite interesting. And the show definitely goes for some very dark and kind of creepy aspects sometimes, and very much like the show you were talking about, it definitely plays with your expectations, and it kind of knows what you think is going to happen. And it definitely does a lot of cases where literally a lot of the quote-unquote twists, or what's really happening, they do kind of throw you for a loop where you think you figured it out, and then the series or the episode turns around and goes, nope, you didn't know anything.
Yeah,
But at the same time, what's great about this show is it's very rewatchable.
Oh, wow.
Because a lot of the episodes become even darker and even creepier once you know what's going on.
Wow, okay.
Because the clues are always there. Like, sometimes it's randomly, like, not to spoil anything, like, for example, there may be a story that people always do where it's like, oh, he was a ghost the whole time. That's a very classic story. But at the same time, when they do a story like that, the clues that they were a ghost the whole time were always there. So it is a really great show, and there's some really great concepts in how they use it. Like, one of my favorite aspects of the show is every episode starts with you literally seeing, number 9. Either it's like house number 9 or flat number 9, or, other things just titled number 9. And then there's a few times where, for a good example, there's one episode where it starts with a house and it's number 22. And so you start going, okay, where's number 9? Like, what's going on? And they start like really messing with you in terms of like your expectations, because you're expecting it to always take place inside number 9. And there's there's another great example where you see an elevator and you see the numbers and it goes all the way down to basement, as in B. And so you're like, okay,
Okay.
where's number 9? What's up with 9?
Mm.
Some really great and dark stories. Some of them stories do end in very unpleasant ways and have some very dark subject matters, which is very interesting if you're into that kind of stuff. And another thing that's kind of interesting as well with the series is the writers themselves appear in almost every episode.
Mm.
And they don't always play the same kind of characters. They're not always, let's say, the comedy relief or the people who know what's going on. They're kind of just either like the main character or sometimes side characters.
Yeah.
But some of the concepts are really great, how they can essentially tell a really 30-minute long story in some of the most bizarre places. I mean, there's episodes that take place entirely in like a train carriage, you know, where people are trying to sleep, or other really just odd locations that you wouldn't think would make for a great or an interesting story.
Mm.
But it's honestly the performances and the stories that make it like really strong in that. So I'd highly recommend watching it. One thing I will say though is go into the live episode completely blind, but make sure you've watched at least the first 4 seasons.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, because the live episode is very interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much all the things I've been doing over the last kind of weeks. So I'd definitely recommend Inside Number 9 if you haven't seen it. And I'm really looking forward to the next series when it finally returns. But let's move on to actual news stories and topics. And the first one I'm going to talk about is regarding rapper MF Doom passing away aged 49. This was so upsetting to find out on New Year's Eve of all times that MF Doom, also known as the supervillain, Victor Vaughn, Madlib, King Ghidorah, Daniel Dumoulin is essentially his real first name, and he has a lot of characters and alter egos. But he passed away October 31st, which for me wasn't a great way to start the new year, as Doom is pretty much my favorite rapper and maybe one of my favorite music artists of all times. And for many reasons that become clear when you actually listen to some of his albums, you know, some of which, you know, are considered like underground classics such as Operation Doomsday or Food or you know, Take Me to Your Leader or Mad Villainly, is that all these albums do so many interesting and amazing things. Because if you see the guy, he does resemble Doctor Doom from Marvel Comics. And there is a reason as to why he does kind of resemble that character. And I think one of the things I love the most about him as an artist is like the reasoning and the theme behind the metal mask he wears. It's not just to be Doctor Doom. And I think he said it a few times in interviews, because people always ask, like, why do you wear the mask? Why do you not show your face? And I think his reasoning behind the mask is that he's talked about how back in the early days of rap, it was never about the image. You never knew who these rappers were. You could only ever figure out who they were just based on the sound of their music or like the album cover. And he goes to talk on about how rap nowadays is more about the image. You know, it's all about like, you know, the brands and the image and what you look like as opposed to the music. So the idea behind the mask is that literally anyone can be MF Doom.
Oh, wow.
So the rough idea. So technically MF Doom isn't, you know, him in a sense. It's essentially anyone. And that's why in a lot of music videos, he's not seen, or it's other people, you know, in the music video and the mask. So it's a really great concept because it's more like that aspect of literally letting the music come through you and kind of being anyone in that sense. And I mean, the other thing as well is the fact that he obviously plays with, you know, characters and like his instrumentals, his samples, and his wordplay. You know, there's a good example. Obviously, I've mentioned the fact that, you know, he looks like Doctor Doom. There's also another character he has called Victor Vaughn, which is, you know, roughly the real name of Doctor Doom, as well as King Ghidorah, who is obviously, you know, Monster Zero from the Godzilla films. You know, so there's some nice kind of ideas, and he does use those themes very well. So, for example, with the Operation Doomsday, he does sample like Marvel cartoon shows. He's sampling like old like cartoons from those eras. Even on his King Ghidorah project, he literally samples from those Godzilla films. You know, kind of making himself almost like this villain, this bad guy in the music industry, despite the fact he's not necessarily a bad guy. But I think it's pretty ironic that he does look like Doctor Doom, yet he's like one of the greatest heroes and like real artists in like the rap and music industry, who, like, he'll honestly be dearly missed, given how many people have, like, talked about him, discussed, like, his passing as being, like, you know, one of the saddest things to happen. But yeah, I definitely wanted to mention him because it is a very personal thing, but I think a lot of people have definitely been, you know, mentioning his unfortunate passing. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And the other story I want to talk about is the fact that the game Battleborn, which I believe came from Gearbox/2K, the servers are going to be shutting down this January, which is going to make it unplayable, which is a bit unfortunate because, well, the thing is, I don't really like these kinds of games for the most part, and I know what some people are going to say, and they're going to say, oh, it's like, it's a bad game that nobody plays, you know, why does it matter? And I think the reason it matters is because, you know, video game preservation / history is important at the end of the day, regardless of whether the game is deemed good or bad, or whether it flops or it's a smash hit. You know, how exactly is the industry going to grow, or how are, like, newcomers going to learn if there is no origin from them to learn from, if that makes sense? Like, typically you learn from others' past mistakes. You know, that's how progression works. We wouldn't be here today if we didn't ever learn from, you know, mistakes or kind of grow up, or in that kind of sense. And this is why I dislike these, like, free-to-play online games that are mainly produced from, like, AAA studios. It's, you know, it's because to me, it's, in a sense, it's like them saying that their game or the industry is, like, disposable, which is not the case, in my opinion. You know, and they're kind of just like, oh, on to the next trend, you know, in that sense. You know, games, in a sense, the way I look at it, they're art. And if you create a game that can be destroyed just like that, you know, just to get rid of history, you know, just in an instant, it devalues the industry, and it also devalues everyone who, like, made it and enjoyed it to some extent. I mean, it doesn't, if you make, I mean, I'm getting all confused. Essentially what I'm saying is, don't make an online game if you're just going to make it unplayable, like, 2 years later.
Oh, yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Like, there's no real worth in that. And it's really unfortunate, because we need to kind of stop doing this. And obviously this is all gonna come back towards the end of the podcast, but it's just really silly, regardless. I mean, you know, I don't really understand how, you know, government money is funded to, you know, keep films preserved, but not things like video games. It's just a bit ridiculous sometimes. And I think more studios need to kind of understand that, you know, their product, their games, they're going to live on forever, and people are going to want to play them, you know, 5, 10, 15 years down in the past, you know, regardless of whether it's a good or bad game. You know, what if I wanted to make a game, you know, like Battleborn? Oh, you know, can't play it no more. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And also in the description and download link is another article, I think it was written back in 2016, that talked about the very reason why this kind of practice, this sort of free-to-play, always online, because the reason you can't play this game anymore is because it's always online. There is a story mode, but when the servers go down, you can't even play the story mode on your own.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. And other studios like Activision and EA do that. And, you know, as another counterpoint, you know, you may be saying, oh, this game's unpopular, and oh, it's like a smaller-ish studio, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Eventually, your favorite, let's say, Call of Duties and other games like that, they'll shut those servers down because they're not as new or as polished or whatever as the other games. I mean, the same thing kind of happened to World of Warcraft in some sense. People didn't want to play the new games. They wanted to play the older ones, but, you know. Let's move on to news stories and topics, shall we? And I believe you have most of them, and particularly the first one to talk about.
Yeah, so the first film I would like to talk about is Coming to America, which is the sequel to the 1988 famous film Coming to America, which actually the word "to" in the middle. That is, well, I got to first talk about the name of the film. I think that's pretty confusing, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
With the number 2 as the sequel in the middle of Coming to America, and then the actual first one with being the actual letter 2, well, the word 2. I'm just thinking, okay, that's confusing. It could have just been Coming to America 2. I mean, just this, yeah. Nitpicky, but I mean, on the podcast we do talk about names of films that we're not too happy about, so I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, that's fine. I completely understand that.
So yeah, this film stars Eddie Murphy. I feel like just adding on to the back to the original film. I feel like in the 80s, Eddie Murphy was at his like prime in acting and doing his like live performances.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was like the era where he was really at his prime. So Coming to America is directed by Craig Brewer, who previously worked on the Footloose remake in 2011. It seems plot-wise that Prince Hakeem has basically a long-lost son back in Queens, New York. So he has to basically try and find this son and basically build some sort of relationship with him and to provide the new heir to the throne. My impressions of the trailer, when I first saw like people sharing the trailer on social media, I was quite hyped for it. I'm not gonna lie. I was aware that this film was going to come out, but I just thought it was like a lie. I thought people were making it up that there was going to be a sequel, but actually it is come to truth. So I was a bit surprised that they were going to bring this film like after 32 years later. So it's quite interesting to see. I was excited at first, but then kind of rewatching the trailer, I thought, you know what, I'm going to watch this trailer, then I'm going to watch the original film's trailer just to compare the two. And I got to say, I don't think this film's going to be as good as the original film at all. Like, when I was watching the recent trailer, I just felt like the music option was okay, but it's easily forgettable. Like, with the original film trailer, it just gets you in the mood. I feel like the trailer of the 80s film is way more funnier than the new film. But I do like the new cast that they've put in the new film. I do like I'm excited to see what they're going to bring to the story. I feel like this film's going to be like a decent watch, but nothing to be hyped for.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I kind of do want to like echo your kind of comments about the cast, which I'm also very excited about as well. I think they definitely picked some pretty good people. Like you've got like Leslie Jones and like Tracy Morgan and Wesley Snipes of all people, who look like they could be definitely some very interesting and varied characters they could play. They're definitely all, I would say, appropriate for the kind of comedy film they're trying to make, especially given that comedy doesn't really exist anymore in that kind of sense. But yeah, this was a surprise to me. This was like another surprise film that Amazon, I guess, was kind of keeping secret and just unveiled out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, very much like Borat 2, because no one expected a Borat 2, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I would say, although like the reasoning for a sequel, it's very of the time, it's somewhat weak to some extent. Everything else, honestly, I'm looking more in terms of like visually. I think it looks great in some sense, definitely. Like compared to the original 1982 classic, which was a little bit flat in tone wise, mainly because that was just how films were made back then, and also I think that was a stylistic approach, because obviously when you think of Africa, you think of it being like very yellow, very vast, very hot, very colourful, and obviously in comparison, New York City, it's very cold, it's very bleak, it's very plain. And in this film, it seems like they've definitely kind of boosted up the colour, the brightness, the saturation, just to kind of make the film pop a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm liking that aspect, especially during that like kind of like dance celebration sequence. It looks very visually like bright and out there, much like a party or a celebration would be. I'm happy to see that at least the returning cast seems like, for the very small snippets we see, have done a pretty good job in terms of like retaining their characters, and it doesn't feel like anything's off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The only thing I do hope with this film, because I'm interested in it. I mean, much like what you said, I don't think this is going to be like the greatest film of all time, but I'm hoping that it's at least a faithful, decent sequel.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm hoping it doesn't rely too much on like referencing the first film too much.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I think is worth noting is it doesn't really spoil too much neither.
No, it doesn't. It's not plot heavy in the trailer at all. Which
I think is a positive in my opinion, because it does kind of make you wonder, what exactly is going to happen. So I'm interested in that, and hopefully I think they can do a good job, depending on like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be like a like a modern day comedy, and that's kind of, it seems like it might be like a classy film at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So here's hoping. Should we move on to our next trailer?
Yep. So the next trailer that I'm going to introduce is Willy's Wonderland. This film is starring Nicolas Cage. And this film is directed by Kevin Lewis, who worked on 2008's horror film The Third Nail. So essentially, this trailer takes place with the main character who basically his car breaks down, and this guy's offering him a new job at Willy's Wonderland, and basically the guy's happy to take it in order to basically fix his car. He's just like, yeah, sure, I'll take the job. And so basically later, so it kind of just the shot is basically of Nicolas Cage kind of just fitting into this new janitor job. And later on, basically it just has like these teens who are like come to this venue and are basically saying like this place has like a dark past and blah blah blah. They go into the venue and basically are telling the janitor basically that this place is has dark history, it's not a good place to be in, you should leave. And then it's like, it just seems like the janitor is so into his job that he's not listening to what they're saying. And then like literally the scene is like, he walks into the bathroom and then there's like blood written, like a message written in blood saying, oh, it's your birthday. And I thought, okay, this is a bit weird. I feel like the trailer goes, after literally that scene, it just literally goes from 0 to 100 like real quick. It literally like, he starts getting attacked by like old animatronics that were in the abandoned Wonderland. I feel like this film's gonna be a crazy and hype at the same time, from like the fighting to like, I feel like the janitor is gonna like play around with like the janitor's mental state as well. I felt like in some scenes. I feel like although this film is intended to be a horror film, I feel like it's also like a film that it's not too serious, and there's going to be like comedy parts in it as well. But yeah, that's pretty much my notes so far.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one for a while. I've been like slowly kind of watching its progress as they've been making it, and I thought it was going to be, because let's not beat around the bush, it's very much inspired by like the Five Nights at Freddy's games, and I thought it was going to be, or kind of much like the other film that I guess is inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's, which is the Banana Splits film back in 2019, which is a very weak film, because there's a whole history with like the whole Five Nights at Freddy's actual film that's going to be happening, where I think it was the channel Sci-Fi or someone was going to have the rights to make the Five Nights at Freddy's film. Then I believe that same studio lost the rights, and I think Universal's now making it.
Yeah.
To which I think the people who made the Banana Splits film, they were originally going to make the Five Nights at Freddy's film, so they kind of just took the script and just made it into its own thing.
Yeah.
And although it's clearly inspired by that series, I'm loving this whole, what if Nicolas Cage was John Wick hunting killer animatronics? Because that's kind of how I'm seeing it, because I think he wants to be there. That's my guess. I think he's out for blood and revenge. That's my guess. It's such a silly and fresh concept that you can't really compare it to anything else.
No, you can't.
And the people making this film, they clearly watched the film Mandy from back in 2018. That's another film that's really out there and has Nicolas Cage in it. And they've definitely incorporated, much like you were saying, they've incorporated kind of like a grindhouse exploitation, kind of like grimy element to the film. Kind of has like that old school kind of like gimmicky horror kind of aspect. It's killer robots that look like animals, and we got to survive the night, that kind of thing. They definitely have that, but it has like such a dirty yet stylistic look.
Yeah.
Like even the animatronics, they look dirty and worn down, Like they look like they've been abandoned for years, and even the place just looks like an absolute mess. And I'm really liking this aspect of it just being just, whatever, just completely crazy and just off the walls, because, I mean, how many other films do you know of where like a man is fighting, a robotic ostrich? I can't think of too many other films like that. And I guess we have to talk about like the animatronics themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't know if you noticed, but this is practical effects and costumes.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. There's a little bit of CGI, but like the animatronics themselves, they are either people or practical effects.
Okay, that's pretty dope.
And they honestly look pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get a clear, like, full body shot of anything, really. But they're really creepy, yet really accurate in terms of how animatronics move.
Yeah.
Like,
I definitely got... Sorry. I definitely got to like add on as well, like the chameleon one. Ugh.
Yeah, it's Cami Chameleon, I believe is what
Yeah,
she's called.
chameleon.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, some of them definitely have like some really kind of like twisted designs for the most part. Like they're very creepy in that sense. Like the ones I'm really liking is like Willy Weasel, who you kind of see in the background, and there is a shot where you kind of see him turn around as if he's on like a motorized stage. That thing is apparently really huge.
Oh right.
And that thing is about like 7 feet tall or something like that.
Oh my god.
So it's really, really concerning. It's like Aussie ostrich, which you see in the trailer, that weird, creepy kind of bug-eyed ostrich. I can tell that's going to strangle someone. And the other one, which you just barely see, and there isn't like a full photo of it, is like Siren Sara. I think that's the one where, when you see like the teeth of like some puppet thing.
Oh, I think that one is the Gus the gorilla.
I'm talking about like the more like not the bigger teeth, but like the slightly more smaller jagged teeth.
Oh yeah. Okay,
I think that's Sara, which because seeing some of these character designs, it reminded me of the I think it was 2000, I want to say 16 film Krampus. That film has some really awesome practical and really creepy and horrible like character designs. Like there's some really disturbing stuff in that film, and even in this film it looks really creepy. And I think what adds to the whole aspect of the film is the fact that these animatronics are clearly real.
Yeah.
It's not like CGI. Like that's clearly a real threat.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm very interested to see how this film is gonna turn out, because it just looks absolutely crazy. It's not even out. It's out in like March.
Oh, okay.
So I cannot wait for this film, because it just looks so stupid in a good way. And hopefully it gets enough buzz that like it gets the attention and is actually a good film. And hopefully, in a funny way, I hope that this film puts more pressure on the actual Five Nights at Freddy's film. Like that would be funny to see. I would love to see people say that this film is better or more unique or more original than the actual Five Nights at Freddy's film.
Right.
Because I know when that film comes out, they're not going to use practical effects.
Yeah, probably CGI.
I'll be surprised if they actually use costumes in that.
Yeah.
But let's move on to our next trailer.
The next one is Earwig and the Witch. It is a animated fantasy film by Studio Ghibli. This is their first CGI film. This film is directed by Goro Miyazaki, who has worked on Tales from Earthsea and From Up on Poppy Hill. So from the trailer, I kind of just grasped that it's basically about a girl who believes it seems that she doesn't want to be adopted, or she doesn't want to leave the orphanage, but basically she gets adopted. But in the scene, I particularly like the scene where she like tries to put on like a goofy face to not get adopted, but then the woman picks her anyway. So it's I just thought that's quite funny. And like she goes back to the house with this new adopted mother. Well, oh gosh, I can't even get my words right. The new mother that's adopting her, and basically the woman introduces herself as like I forgot her name, but she says that she's a witch, and the girl's like not freaked out by it, but she's really interested. She's like, okay, yeah, sure, all right, cool. And this film just seems like a really like fun, light-hearted family film. Definitely would like give this a good a watch. Definitely, it looks fun, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing as well, because obviously there's a lot. Not really. I was about to say there's a lot of pressure, but it's like I guess there's a lot of expectations because it is Studio Ghibli, and obviously they're more known for doing their slightly more traditional looking and made films. And this is the first CGI film, so obviously it's like, how well is that going to look?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the animation, I think sometimes it's a little stiff at points, but overall I think it looks great. I think the characters or their character designs translate very well to 3D, and they're very like playful, and they kind of fit the kind of English witchcraft setting that this film is going for, especially because it's a little bit, it's very much its own adaptation on the original novel that came out, or story that came out. So I do like how they've got their own spin on it. It does, like you kind of mentioned, it doesn't have like the most like grand epic kind of feel to it. I highly doubt that like there's going to be a giant monster in London that she has to fight,
No, no.
But I'm honestly interested in a lot of like things that are just present. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I love I'm interested to see how like magic works in this world. You know, I want to know what's up with the Mandrake. You know, that weird, creepy guy thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I wonder what's up with him, and also the whole element of like music and a band that's kind of hinted in the film.
Yeah, I was a bit confused with that, but
Yeah, the lead poster has like Earwig and like a couple other people like playing music.
yeah.
So I'm not sure how that's gonna play into things. Because I was thinking even just this morning, I was like, what if the magic is actually the music? And I was like, that would be an interesting like twist on things. Like they actually use magic to make themselves a good band or something. I don't know. But there's some interesting stuff in this trailer, and I'm really looking forward to it. And there's some nice like little details I noticed. Like for example, did you notice like Earwig's hair, the girl's hair?
It's the girl with the red hair, right?
Yes, the main girl.
Yeah, her hair. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how her hair resembles like Earwig pincers.
I don't even know what that is.
Earwig is a bug.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they have like pincers, and her hair, when it's like in pigtails, it looks like the pincers of an earwig.
That's interesting.
Because one thing I also noticed as well is just how playful designs are as well. Is if you look at the witches, their hair is very like worm-like.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering like there's maybe like a weird theme with like insects in this film as well. Because I don't know what Earwig is exactly, but we'll see. She probably is a witch herself, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to this one. I think we're both in agreement on that. Next thing we're going to talk about is the Pixar announcements from their kind of like Disney's Investors Day, or I guess we really should say just Disney's Investors Day. I think this stuff was kind of showed off and talked about late December-ish. But would you like to talk about the things that I guess interested you from that? Although some of these are like so far in the future, they might get cancelled or probably don't even matter now.
Yeah, sure. I'll like to start off. First, actually, I would like to even point out that I didn't even know that the Pixar was actually 34 years old. I had no idea that it's been around from, what was it, 1986. I was so surprised. I thought it started off in the 90s, but yeah, learn something new every day.
Yeah.
But there was one particular animation that I was very interested in, which is Turning Red, which is directed by Domi Shi, who received an Oscar for the short film Bao. Which was that short animation was really cute and adorable. It was funny as well.
Yes.
So Turning Red tackles puberty, which is it's a new theme for Pixar to be tackling, because usually like their films is always about like family, relationship, empathy, and like life lessons. So I was quite interested to see how they're gonna tackle puberty. And it's basically like this character called May, and she's a 13-year-old girl going through the average teenager stuff with new interests, new hobbies, etc. And the fun twist is that every time she gets excited, she turns into an adorable red fuzzy panda. I just think that's so cute, and that's like, I just feel like I'm excited by that concept. Honestly, it's so
Yes, this is the other trailer I wanted to talk about as well. It's a really fun and creative like concept, you know, just this whole idea of like, and I think it's a really clever way to talk about like growing up and teenage life and experiencing changes in like a metaphorical way, and it's also very like playful, and I think it's also very relatable in a narrative way as well, because I think a lot of, you know, people who have, you know, children who are at that age, younger, you know, people who are now adults could definitely relate to this whole idea of, you know, being excited or being emotional to the point of you literally becoming, or to other people literally looking like something else, you know, like a monster, or in this case a giant red panda. I honestly think if they nail this film, which I have no doubts they could, because Domi Shi is already have a lot of potential behind them, very clearly. Hence why they've given them a film. This could be like the next great Pixar film. Because Pixar, if you haven't noticed, of recently they've been getting pretty deep with some of their concepts of films. In a sense.
For sure.
Like obviously just talking about soul, you know, literally questioning existence, death and life. You know. So obviously this makes a bit sense, and this is honestly probably one of the only things I was kind of interested in terms of what they're doing, and it's one of the only unfortunate original films to be coming out of Disney and Disney Plus. There are others. I will say that much, but this is definitely like one where it's like I haven't really seen anything like this before.
Yeah, same.
Which is great. Was there anything else you want to add on to Turning Red?
No, that's it.
Other than it looks adorable.
Yeah, basically.
One quick mention I want to talk about coming from, I guess, Disney's announcements is the short film Borrowed. I just want to quickly mention this film because it is a short that is going to be on Disney Plus. It comes from the Pixar Spark Shorts mini-series of small kind of animations, which, if I'm not mistaken, actually no, I can't confirm that. I just want to mention this because it looks really cute. It's like a 2D animated animation about a rabbit who's like burrowing underground and she just wants to make the perfect home. So it's a really kind of cute and interesting thing, which is already out. It came out, I think, literally on Christmas Day. So you can go watch it now if you have Disney Plus. And I just kind of wanted to mention as well, just kind of talking about like Turning Red and this film as well, or short film, is if Disney Plus means that Disney is essentially going to have more experimental films like, Turning Red, with these like concepts that are very bold and somewhat risky in some sense, because like you mentioned, making a film about essentially puberty, that's a very risky thing to do because so many people are like very prudish about that.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is very unfortunate. And when I mean that, I don't mean children, I mean the higher ups. I mean America's educational system is an absolute mess because they won't teach children about that kind of stuff because parents don't want them to know about it for some weird reason, but that's a different topic. If they're essentially going to give like new artists like Domishi, the chance to shine, I'm perfectly fine with Disney Plus existing. If it is literally going to be a platform for new and interesting and experimental things, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on board 100%. So Disney, don't let me down on this one. I guess we'll talk about the next trailer because there was a lot of things that happened at Disney, but we don't really care. So last few mentions really, and we're kind of going to go to gaming. The next trailer we're going to talk about is New Pokemon Snap, which is the sequel to the, I guess, very beloved and very awesome spin-off series Pokemon Snap, in which you essentially went around taking pictures of Pokemon. It was back in the 90s when there was only 150 Pokemon. Now there's a good few, 700-800 now. And this game looks like it's probably going to be the most relaxing game of 2021. And I think most people need a relaxing game like this, given how crazy things are already. And it looks honestly like a very beautiful and very pretty game. I'm hoping that it definitely is like a long game and it's a collectathon, and I'm just glad to see more spin-offs to do with like Nintendo properties, especially Pokemon. It can't just always be an RPG at the end of the day. So really happy, and it's a long time coming. The one thing I want to mention as well with it is back when this game first came out, you could actually go to a kiosk in Blockbusters which actually let you print the photos you took in the game.
Oh, wow.
So I would, though it probably won't happen, obviously, hopefully there's some kind of mechanic like that gets brought back, which I could see probably only being a Japanese thing, because I know there's some convenience stores in Japan where you can go to certain stores and print tickets there. So I really hope that there's like a mechanic like that that exists when the game comes out, even if it's just like a Japan exclusive thing. Next trailer I guess we're going to talk about is Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. I guess I'll ask you briefly, Al, what were your, I guess, thoughts and reactions on this trailer for the most? Because I know it is a very interesting thing that happens in it, I guess.
Yeah, with Bowser's Fury, like the gameplay really reminded me of Super Mario 64 in terms of like the layout and not so much the visuals, obviously, because Super Mario 64 came out years ago. But like, I like the just the whole idea of it being open world. I'm not really a big fan of Super Mario 64, but I do like the whole like aesthetic of it, of like the whole land being like based around cats. I just thought that was pretty cool. I do like the whole new idea of like Bowser having a new threatening form. It gives the game like a more darker feel to it, for sure.
Yeah.
And also as well, which I noticed from the trailer, is like when like he does come about, it's like the music in the trailer changes as well, which is like a rock music, which is rock music, which I thought like that's quite different for a Mario trailer. It's usually quite like 8-bit music or something like that. So yeah, the game looks alright, I would say. But yeah, that's pretty much it really for me.
Yeah, I'm interested in this one because they teased it a while ago, and I forget where it was, some point last year, where they just showed off the fact that they're gonna release 3D World, and then they just showed like this very ominous shot of like rain in this landscape, and that's all they showed, which was immediately had me very interested. But I'm loving the whole concept, much like you said, the very open world aspect of it, the fact that it's like one world that you can constantly explore and find the I don't think that they're not stars, there's something else in this game. I love that aspect, and even there is a I forget, it's like an overview kind of gameplay trailer which kind of explains more of the mechanics.
Yeah.
And in that trailer, they mention the fact that obviously you're going to be teaming up with Bowser Jr. in this.
Oh, yeah.
And he has his paintbrush that he had in Sunshine, which is cool. So that's a nice reference to that. And also the fact that at a certain point, Bowser's just going to start attacking you. Which I love that aspect of, like, you almost have like a timer or like a progression kind of meter. And at a certain point, Bowser's just going to be like just throwing everything at you, and you have to like dodge that for a while. And that's it's also going to like both hinder and help you throughout the game. And just that whole like end of like that almost Dragon Ball Z-esque battle that's going to happen at the end between you and Bowser is very, very interesting. Because of recently, Nintendo's been getting pretty good with its boss battles in Mario games. So that should be interesting to see. Yeah, because there's some really great boss battles in Odyssey that definitely kind of throw you for a loop in terms of like how you fight. Because like I won't spoil it, but there's a boss battle where you literally take on like Bowser, like just Mario small, Bowser huge. You got to fight him. And
wow! Okay.
And it's not a like kind of you got to platform and jump here and avoid him. It's like no, you take him on one-on-one.
Damn.
So that should be interesting. Hopefully they'll do something as crazy as that. And the last trailer we're going to talk about, which is just a mention that I want to talk about real quick, is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, complete edition, the launch trailer. Finally, after 10 years, the Scott Pilgrim game is back. Ubisoft, I guess, got the license back to release it. It's out now, and you should all get it, because this is a game that you couldn't play for almost 10 years because of licensing issues.
Damn.
Which is a massive shame, but Ubisoft have brought it back because they have been hounded for literally a decade to bring the game back, because it's that good of a game, people love it that much, and it never should have been taken down in terms of like licensing and all that kind of stuff. So the main reason I want to mention it is because I want to tell people, if you got the money, if you've never played it, if you finally want to play it, go buy it. Also, you can buy it physically if you go to the website or the company Limited Run Games. They're releasing it on PS4, Switch, as well as a ton of other things, including the soundtrack on vinyl. So you can go and grab all that stuff. The pre-order is open until February 28th. So you have about 6 weeks to get the money, save it up, and buy the game. Yeah, and it's an open pre-order. It's not going to run out of copies until the pre-order closes. So please, I really want people to support this game, not because it's one of my favorite games, but because if this game does really well and Ubisoft sees that people really like these kinds of games that have disappeared off the face of the earth, or these digital games that you can no longer play, hopefully it'll start a new trend where more companies seek out the rights for licensed games and re-release them for a new audience. So I really want people to, hopefully, even if you just shout out about the game, I want more games that have been lost to be re-released, because once again, kind of going back to video game preservation, it's important. Were you aware of this game, Al?
Yeah, Pete, I heard people talking about this game.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the trailer. I only watched it once. Yeah, I watched it once. Yeah, the game looks actually pretty fun, even especially to play with mates as well. Personally, like, I have actually watched, well, since we're speaking of Scott Pilgrim, I watched parts of the film, but like Scott Pilgrim as a whole, as the film, I just never really took interest in the film. But the game seems really, really fun. Like, I feel like with those, it's one of those things where like I may not like the film, but I may enjoy the game.
And that's perfectly fine. I would say it's definitely worth getting. If you get the game, I'll definitely get it and we'll play.
Oh, cool.
Because it's a really good game, and it's one of those kinds of games that I played like constantly. It's got a great soundtrack. It like the great thing about the game is that it kind of combines both the original comic, the film, and then does its own thing.
Ooh, okay.
So in a sense, think of it as literally think of it as Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the film, the game. Because I think it was originally called The Film, the Game. Because it literally there's a lot of video game references, and it obviously looks very much like a beat 'em up. It's not hiding the fact that it's very much inspired by Double Dragon and all that kind of stuff. Like it very clearly is. But I just wanted to mention that game, and hopefully more people go and play it. And I'm glad to see more people are supporting it in that. So that's a mention, and I guess we can start wrapping up this podcast with the video of the episode. And it's going to be quite a long, I guess, episode, and that is going to be for Long Gone Gulch. It's the full pilot episode, which has finally been released after several years. This was a kickstarted animation project, which they finally made it. The reason it took so long to make was because the actual animators themselves, they've worked on a lot of like shows as well, so they're not like just two people who just appeared out of nowhere. They have worked on industry cartoons, and imagine that would have taken up time from their passion project.
Right.
And I don't want to spoil this animation. I want to shout them out because I think they need a lot of love and support, especially if you're into animation, you're into somewhat old school-ish cartoons. It kind of has like an old school kind of vibe to it. Definitely seems like something that would be on during the 90s or the 2000s to an extent, but definitely they have the advantages of like having it be like more of an online show. And maybe it will be a YouTube or a website series, or maybe it will be maybe someone will actually pick it up to become a TV series. Here's hoping, because they got a lot of potential, and it's not as if they don't know what they're doing, because I'm pretty sure that one of the people who's working on it is currently working on the they might be working on the Cuphead cartoon, so that should be interesting. Okay. I think it's them, because I at least know one of the people who made this. They made the very underrated Mickey Mouse cartoon, which is pretty good. And I think the same team or people who are making that, they're making the Cuphead cartoon that's going to be on Netflix. And from what I've seen, the Cuphead cartoon looks pretty good. And I know people are wondering, hey Raccoon, how have you seen the Cuphead cartoon? And I'm like, I've got my sources. I've seen a lot of stuff that isn't out yet. Trust me, and I'll tell you about some of those after the recording, Al, because I don't want to get in trouble. But is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up this podcast, Al?
No.
Cool. Okay. Well, I guess I will end this first podcast of 2021 by saying I was the Angry Raccoon.
I'm the Indigenous Al.
And we will see you on the next podcast.